Gbernau was supposed to be the man to finally stop Valentino Rossi's reign. For a brief moment, he looked like the only rider who could. In 2003 and 2004, riding for the Telefonica Movistar Honda team, Gbernau racked up multiple wins and consistently battled at the front. He was fast in qualifying, mentally sharp, and incredibly aggressive under braking, traits that defined him as Honda's golden ticket to the title. The factory backed him, sponsors swarmed him, and after the sudden retirement of Daijiro Kato, Gbernau was promoted as the heir to Honda's 500cc throne. His 2003 season was strong. He won 4 races and finished second in the championship behind Rossi. He looked calm, calculated, and dangerous. 2004 started even stronger, with another win at Jerez and a dominant run in the early half of the season. But something changed at Qatar that year. That race destroyed his trajectory. In Qatar 2004, Rossi was penalized before the race for performing a burnout on the grid, allegedly cleaning his starting position. The complaint? Filed by none other than Gbernau's team. As a result, Rossi was sent to the back of the grid. Gbernau started from pole. It should have been a guaranteed win. But Rossi didn't just fight back. He humiliated him. From dead last, Rossi sliced through the field and passed Gbernau with ruthless precision, crossing the line over a second ahead. It wasn't just a victory, it was psychological annihilation. Rossi later claimed Gbernau broke that day. And he wasn't wrong. From that race onward, Gbernau's form collapsed. Despite riding a full factory Honda, he never won another MotoGP race. In 2005, he crashed out multiple times while leading races, including a heartbreaking fall at Jerez after colliding with Rossi on the last lap. His confidence was visibly shattered. His decision-making under pressure vanished. He looked like a different rider altogether. By 2006, he was off the podium and out of a factory seat. Ducati picked him up, but he never adapted. The results got worse. Injuries piled up. Sponsors lost interest. Gbernau quietly stepped away from MotoGP by the end of the season. In 2009, he attempted a bizarre comeback with the Grupo Francisco Hernando Ducati team. It was short-lived and pointless. The bike was uncompetitive, the team folded mid-season, and Gbernau's return ended in silence. He retired with 9 MotoGP wins and 13 poles. But more importantly, he became a case study in how a title contender could completely unravel, mentally, emotionally, and professionally, after one defining defeat. Ben Spies. Ben Spies came to MotoGP with real-world credentials. A world superbike champion, a wildcard assassin, and one of the most hyped American riders since Nicky Hayden. When Yamaha gave him a factory ride in 2011, expectations were sky high, and at first, he delivered. He was aggressive, fearless, and possessed a uniquely muscular riding style that punished the rear tire, but delivered results. He adapted quickly, scoring consistent top 5s and podiums. Then came his shining moment at Assen. In 2011, Spies took a sensational victory at the Dutch TT, controlling the race from the front and beating Stoner and Dovizioso in dominant fashion. It wasn't a fluke. It was calculated, clean, and fast. He became the first American to win a MotoGP race since Hayden in 2006. Yamaha believed he would eventually take over the factory role from Lorenzo or fight alongside him. The doors to multiple titles seemed wide open. Then, it all collapsed. In 2012, his physical condition began deteriorating. He developed chronic pain in his shoulder and arm that doctors couldn't immediately diagnose. He struggled to finish full races without numbness. His confidence was visibly shaken. He began crashing more frequently, missing braking markers, and complaining of feeling disconnected from the bike. His season became a medical nightmare. A broken rib, torn ligaments, arm pump surgery, nerve damage. One injury followed another. Even in races where he was competitive, his body couldn't keep up with the demands of a 300-horsepower prototype bike. By the end of 2012, he announced he was leaving the Yamaha factory team and signed with Ducati's satellite squad. But his shoulder never recovered. The nerve damage in his upper back left him unable to grip the bars fully. His lap times dropped dramatically. His final races were painful to watch. In 2013, after just 2 appearances, Spies retired from MotoGP. No farewell tour, no media fanfare. He simply left the sport, broken, not mentally, but physically. Spies was never defeated by competition. He was defeated by biology. Marco Melandri was Italy's next big thing before anyone everyone knew who Jorge Lorenzo was. He won the 250cc World Championship in 2002 and was hailed as the country's second golden boy behind Rossi. He had charm, style, and a riding technique built for MotoGP. When he made the step up in 2003, he was considered a title contender in the making. In 2005, everything clicked. He joined the Gresini Honda team, won 2 races, and finished second in the World Championship behind Rossi. He beat Nicky Hayden, Max Biaggi, and Loris Capirossi in the standings. For a moment, he was the only Italian who could challenge Rossi's dominance, but it didn't last. Melandri's biggest enemy became team choices. He repeatedly picked the wrong bikes at the wrong time. He stayed with satellite Honda teams too long. When he finally moved to a factory ride, it was Kawasaki, an uncompetitive project. He then switched to Ducati in 2008, joining the team fresh off Casey Stoner's title run. But the Desmo Sedici hated him. Melandri never adapted to the bike's harsh braking, heavy steering, or brutal acceleration. He crashed often. When he finished races, he was buried in the midfield. His confidence plummeted. In interviews, he later admitted he stopped giving real feedback to engineers and purposely lied about bike performance just to get through the season. He simply wanted out. By mid-2008, Ducati paid him $5 million to leave early. He joined the satellite Hayate team for 2009 on an outdated Kawasaki and still managed better results than his factory Ducati stint. But the damage was done. He would never return to title contention. Melandri continued in World Superbikes with occasional success, but his MotoGP dream, once bright and full of promise, died slowly, buried under poor contracts, mental burnout, and technical misfires. He was Italy's second hope. He ended up as its forgotten one. Tony Elias didn't just beat Valentino Rossi once. He arguably changed the outcome of a world championship because of it. At Estoril in 2006, Elias pulled off one of the most shocking wins in MotoGP history. On the final lap, he outbraked Rossi with insane aggression, squeezing through a gap that barely existed, and held the lead by 0.002 seconds at the finish line. It remains one of the closest finishes ever. That race didn't just earn him a win, it cost Rossi the championship. Had Rossi won that day, he would have secured enough points to edge out Nicky Hayden at the season finale. That moment should have been Elias's launchpad to greatness. Instead, it was the peak. Elias had always been quick. From the 125cc and 250cc classes, he was known for his fearless riding style, constantly pushing the front end under braking. But in MotoGP, it didn't translate to consistency. He switched bikes and teams almost every season, from Honda to Ducati to satellite squads. Every team believed he had the pace. None could unlock it regularly. He became known as a wild card, brilliant one race, invisible the next. In the wet, he was unpredictable. In the dry, he was often mid-pack. Injuries didn't help, but the main issue was always the same. He couldn't adapt his riding to the evolving electronics and tire behavior of modern MotoGP bikes. He relied on feel and instinct, an asset in the past, but a liability in the data-driven era. By 2009, Elias was out of a ride. Then came Moto2. In 2010, Elias became the inaugural Moto2 world champion. He won 7 races and reminded everyone of his talent. It should have been a redemption story, proof that he was still worthy of the premier class. MotoGP gave him one more chance. LCR Honda signed him in 2011, but the results were catastrophic. He failed to score points in most races and looked completely out of rhythm. The dream was over. He left the paddock, finishing his MotoGP career with just 1 win. The Estoril miracle, and more regret than reward. He beat a legend, but he never became one. John Hopkins. John Hopkins never won a MotoGP race, but those who saw him ride knew he had everything it took. When Hopkins arrived in the early 2000s, he was part of a new wave of American riders post Kenny Roberts Jr. and Nicky Hayden. Young, aggressive, and raw, Hopkins rode like he had something to prove every single lap. He was constantly pushing the limit, even when the bike underneath him had no business being near the front. Suzuki gave him a shot, but the early GSVR machines were underpowered and unreliable. Hopkins didn't care. He threw them into corners like they were title-contending Yamahas. He regularly qualified in the top 10 and finished races ahead of faster bikes through sheer force of will. 2007 was his breakout year. With Bridgestone tires and improved machinery, Hopkins finished 4th in the World Championship, behind only Casey Stoner, Dani Pedrosa, and Valentino Rossi. He stood on the podium 4 times. At just 24 years old, he was knocking on the door of superstardom. Then came the crash, and another, and another. Hopkins's body took brutal punishment. Surgeries became routine. He broke his hand, his ankles, tore ligaments, shattered bones. He had 30-plus surgical procedures by his late 20s. He once raced with a dislocated shoulder and a cracked rib. In 2011, he even raced with no feeling in 3 fingers after partial amputation due to infection. Hopkins refused to give up, but eventually, the damage was irreversible. His physical condition deteriorated to the point that doctors warned him one more crash and he might not walk again. He retired in 2012. He left with 0 wins, but the paddock never forgot his heart. Riders respected him. Teams admired him. Fans loved him. Hopkins wasn't a failed talent. He was a physically broken one. Alex DAngelus. Alex DAngelus was built for MotoGP. At least that's what his early career said. In the 250cc class, he was a podium machine. From 2002 to 2007, he was a frontrunner in nearly every race, racking up over 40 podiums without ever winning a title. He had speed, consistency, and a technical understanding that made him the kind of rider engineers loved working with. In 2008, he made the step up to MotoGP with the Gresini Honda squad. Expectations were high. The team had a history of grooming satellite riders into race winners, but DAngelus struggled immediately. He lacked the aggression needed in the premier class. He was a smooth, clean rider, perfect for 250cc, but ill-suited for the brutal braking zones and tire management MotoGP demanded. He finished the season without a podium, and with only a few top 10 finishes. He stayed with Gresini in 2009, but things didn't improve. He crashed frequently and couldn't outshine his teammates. Midway through the season, he was quietly informed that he wouldn't be retained. In 2010, he bounced around from team to team, filling injury slots, taking wildcard entries, and trying to cling to a MotoGP seat. But the spark never returned. By 2011, he was out of the class entirely, back in Moto2. DAngelus's MotoGP stats don't match his talent. 0 wins, 0 podiums. A reputation as a rider who was always almost there, but never quite. He wasn't untalented. He was just too late for the era he belonged in. Randy de Punie had raw speed. That was never the problem. In qualifying, he could extract lap times from underpowered machines that made factory engineers raise their eyebrows. When he put his LCR Honda on the second row at tracks like Assen or Gbernau, it wasn't luck. It was talent. But Sunday was never his day. De Punie was MotoGP's poster child for self-sabotage. He had incredible one-lap pace and a natural, aggressive style, especially under braking, but lacked the discipline to translate it over race distance. His crashes were so frequent that fans began calling it the Randy Special. Qualify well, start strong, then crash around lap 10. And it wasn't just race crashes. He had a notorious reputation for over-pushing during practices and warm-ups, often injuring himself before race day. In 2009, while riding for LCR Honda, he fractured his ankle mid-season, but still raced. The injury flared up again weeks later after another crash. He kept returning too early and crashing again. It was a cycle. The worst part? The paddock loved him. Engineers respected his feedback. His commitment in wet conditions was legendary. He'd ride through monsoon-level downpours when others backed off. But even when he had factory-level support, like with the Pramac Ducati in 2011, he couldn't put a full season together. Injuries, inconsistency, and mental lapses always intervened. He raced in the premier class for nearly a decade. 0 wins, 0 podiums, over 100 race starts, and dozens of DNFs. Randy wasn't missing talent. He was missing control. Shina Nakano. Shina Nakano was Japan's quiet hope. He never screamed for attention, never played politics, and rarely made headlines. But in the early 2000s, people inside the paddock quietly believed he could be Japan's next great MotoGP champion. His riding style was surgically smooth. Unlike many of his Japanese contemporaries, who were aggressive and animated on the bike, Nakano was precise. His corner entry was flawless, his tire management exceptional, and his attitude calm under pressure. Kawasaki saw him as their lead project rider. When they returned to MotoGP in 2003 with a full factory effort, Nakano was the cornerstone. His development skills helped shape the ZX-RR, and by 2004, he he began finishing in the top 10 regularly. In 2006, he delivered Kawasaki's best-ever MotoGP result, second place at Assen, holding off Danny Pedrosa and Nicky Hayden in a fierce scrap. That was supposed to be the turning point. It wasn't. Despite occasional flashes, Nakano never returned to the podium. Kawasaki's technical development stalled. The bike was fast in qualifying, but unpredictable over race distance. Nakano became a test mule, endlessly refining chassis stiffness, engine response, and electronics, but never getting the tools to win. His next move, switching to Honda's satellite Konica Minolta team, was a step backward. Without factory support, he faded into midfield. By 2008, he was back of the grid. Nakano retired from MotoGP with only one podium and no wins. Yet inside the sport, he was still respected. Team bosses called him one of the best riders never to win a race. He had everything except the bike to prove it. Anthony West. Anthony West's story is one of chaos. In the 250cc and supersport classes, West was a force in the wet. His nickname, Rainmaster, came from his ability to slice through the field during downpours. In 2003, riding an underpowered Aprilia in Assen, he climbed from 17th to 2nd in a wet-dry race, a performance that caught everyone's attention. In 2007, he was finally given his MotoGP break. Kawasaki called him up mid-season to replace Olivier Jacques. West was quick out of the gate, finishing in the points and immediately impressing with his commitment. But the momentum never lasted. He struggled with dry setup. He was erratic on throttle, and the mental side of the sport seemed to wear him down faster than anyone else. West jumped teams constantly, from Kawasaki to MZ, from MotoGP to Moto2 to Supersport, back to Moto2. It seemed like he was everywhere, but never settled. Then came the doping scandals. In 2012, he failed a drug test for methylhexanamine, an illegal stimulant. He claimed it came from an energy drink. He was banned retroactively, and several of his race results were stripped. That was only the beginning. In 2018, while racing in the Supersport 600 category, West failed another doping test, this time for banned substances that led to a 2-year ban from FEM-sanctioned events. At 37, that essentially ended his career. West responded to the ban with public fury, lashing out at MotoGP, calling the system broken, and accusing officials of targeting riders without factory protection. His social media turned into a war zone of rants and accusations. He had the skill to win at world level, but Anthony West's career was a train wreck of poor decisions, instability, and self-destruction.